Part 1. The Familiar Loop. Hello everyone. Today we are going to dissect a strange phenomenon, a paradox that has become a recurring theme at the Theatre of Dreams. Every time Manchester United decides to change the man at the helm and hands temporary power to a familiar face, the team suddenly plays with a newfound fluidity. Results turn positive, and the gloomy atmosphere surrounding the club seems to lighten almost overnight. From the story of Ole Gunnar Solskjaer a few years ago to the current reality with Michael Carrick in early 2026, this pattern has repeated enough that we can no longer call it a coincidence. But is this a genuine turning point, a rebirth from the ashes, or simply a brief decompression period before the crushing weight of expectation returns to stifle everything once again? We have just moved past a period of stagnation under Ruben Amorim. It was a time when the dressing room felt heavy, and at Old Trafford, sighs were heard more often than applause. In that context, the emergence of Michael Carrick acted like a temporary reset button for a squad that was falling apart. Carrick wasn't a blockbuster signing for the managerial seat, nor did he bring an immediate, loud, tactical revolution. He was simply a familiar face, someone who understands the club's heartbeat, its people, and the suffocating pressure of this place better than anyone else. The change hasn't been noisy, but it has been profoundly clear. It shows in the way the team approaches matches, in the reactions of the key pillars on the pitch, and in the positive energy slowly trickling back into every game. Our story today begins with this very turning point, the rise of Michael Carrick in the post-Amorim era. Part 2. Michael Carrick and the fresh breeze of 2026. Since taking over the hot seat in mid-January 2026, Michael Carrick has rapidly engineered a stunning 5-game unbeaten run consisting of 4 wins and 1 draw. Remarkably, this included direct victories over formidable opponents such as Manchester City, Arsenal, Tottenham, and Fulham. The only draw came away at West Ham, where United dropped 2 points only because of a late equalizer by Benjamin Sesko. This impressive streak has propelled United to 4th place in the table with 45 points after 26 rounds. It is a clear leap forward, reigniting hope in the race for a Champions League spot. So what exactly made the difference in such a short time? The first highlight lies in his decisive tactical adjustments. Carrick had the courage to abandon the 3-4-3 system, which had caused so much debate and friction under Amorim, switching instead to a 4-2-3-1 formation. This is a structure deeply familiar to the majority of players in the current squad. This change immediately improved balance in the midfield, liberated the wingers, and, most importantly, optimized the role of the number 9. Secondly, there was a shift in training methodology. Carrick chose to shorten training sessions while increasing intensity, demanding absolute focus in every drill. Sessions often ended early to ensure the players' peak physical condition rather than dragging on and causing mental fatigue. Assistant Steve Holland also played a crucial role by implementing a homework system. Tactical analysis clips were sent directly to the players' personal phones, allowing them to study proactively rather than sitting through long, passive meetings. This change not only improved comprehension, but also fostered a sense of ownership and excitement within the squad. The third aspect, and perhaps the most vital, is the art of man management. Michael Carrick didn't use an iron fist, he used empathy. He held private dialogues with key veterans, most notably Casemiro. He reignited the pride of a warrior who had won the Champions League 5 times, reminding him of his inherent class. Carrick also ended strict dietary bans in the dressing room and adjusted the bus schedule to the stadium so players had more time to soak in the fans' energy. At the same time, he increased transparency through frank post-match discussions. These details, seemingly small, are creating a massive impact on the collective spirit. Part 3. Leadership, composure, and the calm strategy. At the management level, we see a significant shift from the top brass. The board, under the leadership of Jason Wilcox and Omar Barada, has shown remarkable sobriety. Despite the positive results on the pitch, they haven't rushed to appoint Carrick to a permanent position. In fact, not a single new signing was made during the January transfer window, despite previous complaints about injuries. Logically, this is a calm strategy designed to avoid emotional decisions that could have long-term consequences. The board understands that if Manchester United secures a Champions League spot, the allure of the manager's seat will increase significantly, opening the door to compete for the world's most prestigious coaching names. Whether Carrick's future is interim or permanent remains to be seen, but this period has confirmed him as a coach with a modern mindset. He knows how to blend cold tactical data with the soft art of leadership to revive a team that had lost its way. Part 4. Memories of Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, Fairy Tales and Limits. To better understand the paradox we are discussing, we must revisit a story that anyone following Manchester United a few years ago remembers vividly. It was December 2018 when Jose Mourinho left dejectedly and Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was brought in as an interim. At that time, expectations for the Norwegian manager were low. Many saw it merely as a firefighting solution, yet an 8-game winning streak appeared, bringing emotional comebacks. The pinnacle was the legendary night in Paris against PSG, where the world began to believe in a real miracle. Everything happened so fast that the difference was palpable. As an interim, Ole brought positive energy, psychological liberation, and a united team that played with inspiration. But once that seat became permanent, pressure and expectations completely changed the nature of the story. Ole's journey at Old Trafford was one of the most controversial and emotional chapters in the post-Sir Alex Ferguson era. Taking over a fractured dressing room, Ole brought a breath of fresh air with an 11-game unbeaten run. This feat earned him a permanent contract in March 2019, launching a period of searching for the Red Devils' identity. In nearly 3 years of leadership, Ole actually achieved noteworthy statistical milestones. He helped the team finish in the top 4 in 2 consecutive seasons, something that hadn't happened since Sir Alex retired, third in 2019 to 2020 and runner-up in 2020 to 2021. Most notably, he set an unprecedented record of 28 consecutive away games unbeaten in the Premier League. However, the fatal flaw of this era was the lack of concrete trophies. The penalty shootout defeat to Villarreal in the 2021 Europa League final was a heavy psychological turning point, showing that when standing at the threshold of glory, Ole's United still lacked that true champion's grit. The end of the Solskjaer era came from a convergence of harsh factors in late 2021. Despite heavy investment in superstars like Jadon Sancho, Rafael Varane, and the return of Cristiano Ronaldo, United suddenly lost their balance. Humiliating defeats to arch-rivals, most notably the 0-5 loss to Liverpool at home and a lackluster 0-2 loss to Man City, caused trust to hit rock bottom. The final straw came after a 1-4 defeat to Watford, forcing the board to sack the man affectionately known as the baby-faced assassin. In hindsight, Ole excelled as a healer. He cleared the psychological wreckage and rebuilt the club culture. However, when the time came for a tactical breakthrough to conquer higher peaks, he seemed to reach his limit. Nevertheless, the legacy he left remains a vital foundation for the generations that followed. Part 5. Decoding the Easy Chair. From Carrick's story today to the lessons from Ole years ago, there is a common thread. Every time temporary power is given to a familiar face, everything seems to lighten. Results improve quickly, morale turns positive, and the atmosphere becomes less suffocating. The interim seat has, for years, provided a strange sense of relief. It's not that it carries less pressure in an absolute sense, but rather that the way people view it is entirely different from the permanent position. This difference in expectation and psychology creates a fascinating paradox. The first reason is the psychological release effect. Interim managers often enjoy incredible unbeaten runs because players are unburdened from old conflicts. They play with freedom. Michael Carrick in 2021 also went unbeaten in 3 games against big opponents like Villarreal and Arsenal, despite only being in charge for a week. Not having to plan for the long-term future allows these strategists to focus entirely on individual matches, turning every game into a short-term final. The second reason is the shift in public expectation. For a permanent manager, every match is scrutinized through the lens of massive goals. Conversely, an interim is seen as a savior. Public indulgence creates a safety zone. Look at Carrick now. Following the crisis under Amorim, who left with a win rate of around 37%, Carrick's results are hailed as miracles, even though the actual pressure on him is far less than someone responsible for a long-term project. Added to this is the relationship between manager and player. Since the tenure is limited, they don't have to face the thorny problems of long-term squad management, such as clearing out players or complex transfers. Players, especially those previously out of favor, put in 200% effort to prove their worth to the new man. The absolute support from the stands for club legends like Ruud van Nistelrooy or Carrick acts as a perfect shield. They work in a peaceful environment where love outweighs technical criticism. Part 6. The Dark Side and Hidden Risks. But we must look at the flip side, because no seat at Old Trafford is truly comfortable. The interim seat offers initial lightness, but behind it lie countless risks. When power is incomplete and long-term plans are unclear, stability is actually very fragile. Success that comes too fast can create illusions and long-term consequences for the collective. Being an interim at MUFC is often much easier than being the permanent captain. An interim steps into a crisis with the simple goal of stabilizing the dressing room and gaining immediate points. No one asks them to draft a 5-year plan or overhaul the academy. When the pressure of expectation is halved, psychological performance often doubles. But when that seat becomes permanent, the role changes entirely. From a paramedic treating symptoms, you must become the architect rebuilding the entire body. That's when exclusionary decisions begin. Who gets benched? Who gets sold? Initial support gradually turns into internal competition. Interim managers also don't carry the burden of transfer responsibility. Carrick currently uses what is available. He isn't questioned about past transfer blunders or the fact that millions were spent on an unbalanced squad. But a permanent manager is different. They start the season with specific targets like the top 4 or trophies. When there is something to lose, public judgment becomes much harsher. Part 7. The Journey to Sustainability. The current caution of the Manchester United board is a lesson learned from the hasty decisions of the past. They don't want the emotions of a few successful weeks to lead to a long-term commitment without a foundation. They want to evaluate Carrick in harsher tests, when opponents start to figure him out, when a difficult run of fixtures arrives, when the initial euphoria fades. Interim status is an opportunity, but permanence is a responsibility. If Carrick is one day given the permanent job, he won't just be a savior. He will have to build the future. And at Old Trafford, building the future is always a much more grueling task than rescuing the present. We must face the limits of the interim model. Short-term success can sometimes make a club hesitate in strategic decisions. For Carrick and his staff, every win is an opportunity, but also an invisible pressure. Moral effects cannot entirely mask structural problems. The recent draw with West Ham was a stark reminder of this truth. If Michael Carrick wants to turn this opportunity into a real turning point, he must do more than create a positive atmosphere. He needs to establish clear authority and define a solid tactical identity rather than relying on minimalism and temporary organization. He must also be willing to trade his savior image to become the man held accountable for the long term, ready to face media storms when failure strikes. On the board's side, caution must be accompanied by consistency. The biggest mistake is not choosing the wrong person, but lacking consistency in the decision made. In reality, Carrick carries the greater risk. If he fails, his reputation as a legend could be severely damaged. Therefore, both sides need to agree on a realistic goal. Does United need a sustainable rebuilding project or just short-term sparks? Carrick has the interim's charm, but to cross that thin line, he needs to prove he can build a foundation rather than just create an effect. Ultimately, the issue isn't just about who sits in that chair. It's about how this club builds a foundation strong enough so it no longer has to live through these familiar cycles of change. Hopefully, Manchester United will have good results during Carrick's tenure, giving them the basis to build something greater in their journey to reclaim their rightful status.